Welcome to Real Estate Conversation. Today I have Paul Vincenti to my right and James Buzutil to my left. Paul's been training in general for 30 years. He's been training real estate for 16.
16 years.
And James been in the real estate industry for 22 years. Today we're talking about education in the real estate industry. Where does it fit? Why is the real estate industry not considered a profession by some, and where does the future lie with its regulation? Education is the key to success in every industry. If you are to excel in a role, keeping up with customer and industry trends is of utmost importance. The industry still has a stigma caused by the fact that several agents that enter a career in real estate are let loose on the market to their own devices without necessary training. So, unbeknownst to them, they are blemishing the real estate industry. As an experienced person in the real estate industry, in your personal opinion, what is the future of education in the real estate industry, and to what effect will improving the education make a difference in the industry?
As it stands at the moment, there has never been and nothing planned in the foreseeable future that the government would take real estate as an area which they would educate in particularly, and it's been left to private companies such as us, which is what we've been doing to take training seriously. The matter of upping the level of the knowledge of the real estate agent is a must. The bar for real estate agents to become a real estate agent today is as low as somebody will print you a business card which says real estate agent and you're done and dusted. In companies like ours, we've taken that bar far higher, but there's so much more to go. And how will it change? I believe that it is the only way forward, because I've been in the industry for 22 years, and I like to refer to the times when we'd put on our Stetson and our spares and go out to work. And that was okay then, but those rules don't apply today. The population is far more demanding. They demand to have a service. They demand a knowledgeable person to be the real estate agent, and that can only be accomplished by training together with experience, but by training first.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with you, James. The issue with the real estate industry as it is today, it's evolved, as you said. I remember it many years ago, like you do, where we were called cowboys. Literally, the cowboys are out back at work, and many of us acted like cowboys. And to be fair, your discerning customer of those days wondered why we were even earning, what we were doing to earn the commission. So we gathered and gained a really bad reputation over the years. And what's wonderful about the RE/MAX organization, and when you look at the way RE/MAX works compared to everybody else, and you're talking to someone here who's trained everybody else. I mean, I've trained all the big ones. Over all these years, I've worked with them or trained them. And the difference fundamentally with RE/MAX is that you don't stop. You just don't stop training. And to the point where when we start to hear, oh, not that again, we're repeating, then we know when we're repeating that it's getting in. Because it takes a long time for people to change attitudes and behavior. I mean, a simple training session won't change it. Experience will, and then repetition, reminding will. Failure will often remind them I'm doing the wrong thing. And then finally, it improves. In training, what we see is we use a formula called the latitude of acceptance. So if I have to teach you a new skill or an attitude, and your current attitude as a real estate agent is 1 towards the where I want you to be is at 10, but you're currently at 1. If I train you once, I might get you in that 2, 3, 4 hour session up to maybe 2, 3. Now, if I leave that and then go back and revisit it, a year later, it's gone down to 1.5. So it's not 1, it's improved slightly, but I've lost a bit. When you keep on training and reminding, you move the latitude of acceptance towards a skill or a behavior further along to the place you want it to be. And that's what's so wonderful about working, and I do work exclusively with RE/MAX for that fundamental reason, that you take it seriously. And it's a pleasure to see that the investment in training is so profound, because the future is that's what differentiates us from everybody else, and what will differentiate any professional agent from the old cowboys of before. So it's clear to me that the future is more and more training and investment.
Paul, as you've trained not only in Malta, you've trained in Lisbon, Italy. Do you see the same trends?
Malta's caught up very quickly with what's going on. I think the exposure Remax being an international franchise, the largest real estate franchise out there. The very fact that even you guys here in Malta, we travel a lot and we go to these conventions. I end up training in different countries as well. I find that we excel in many areas in Malta. We actually do excel. And there are areas where we need to improve, but most certainly we compete well above our weight class. I mean, Malta is a small island, but when you see what we can do and the energy we have and the attitude we have towards success and striving to be better all the time, when I compare what I train overseas to when I train people locally, is what I see most of all is here in Malta there's an enthusiasm to want to produce a better product. In some countries, they don't train enough. So someone like me, there aren't many trainers in Europe who do what we do. And so they may train once, twice a year, and then they just leave people, and they go back on the Likert scale. Here in Malta, it's not just me that trains, and that's important for us to remember. I did start off in doing the main training, but now we have induction training, we have trainers and academies. The setup is professional, so it really is something where it's not like, very rarely will you find this even overseas. Yeah, you'll find academies, but they don't have a system that begins at induction and onboarding right through all the way through to advanced training. So I see advantages and I see places where we're better and places where we can improve.
In fact, I believe that one of the major reasons why you may want to join Remax is our ability to train you. And that only comes because training is, let's admit it, is expensive. It's an expensive direction to take. It's quite costly. And we can do that because we are successful and we have a large market share. Given that market share, we do plow back into training and do our very, very best to raise that level, which I believe we are succeeding in many, many ways. And it all depends on how you measure it, of course. Yeah. If the size of the industry in the island has forced us into larger number of agents, and therefore we are training a larger spectrum of people, different ages. We have some people who are retired, some people who are fresh out of university and get into real estate today. So we are training a larger spectrum, and the results that are showing are varied. But we are definitely putting 110% into this, and the results are beginning to show. We are changing the way people perceive a real estate agent, because a large percentage of our estate agents can give a level of service which is unheard of in Malta.
It's unheard of, very true. You find they go to the level of the detail now, which we never went to before. And that comes from the strategy of Remax and Malta also, because we know we're dealing not only with a discerning customer today who's more informed, but also we're dealing with foreign investors, and they expect certain standards. So if you're a foreign investor thinking about buying property in Malta, when you work with a company, for example, like Remax, we're geared up for that. We have people who know what you require, what you expect. So, for example, they're more discerning in the sense that maybe they're coming from an environment where, for example, they're used to only working with an agent, and the agent is professional. It's just their agent who's on their side. We understand that's important. Whereas if you work with, and as I said, I've experienced this by training them many years ago. If you work with many of our competitors, they don't have a clear policy. They may have an agent who accidentally fell into that area, but nobody actually, with a strategy, with a business plan, who knows what is needed and required and delivers it.
James, training is great, but what is the training? What do they learn? I mean, from the day they come in to induction, and then Paul can maybe explain the other courses that he...
At the beginning, we start with the basic real estate part of it, from how to measure a property correctly, MEPA rules, MEPA guidelines, the laws governing a convenium, a contract. These are things which an estate agent must know like the back of his hand, must be knowledgeable in, because although he is not a professional with a degree, so to speak, and should be offering advice, should be still offering sage advice to customers to move forward. So there's a lot of training which is happening in terms of the real estate tools, and then you move into, which is also important, the softer skills, which is customer care, customer service, selling skills as well, because I have firmly believed that, and I've said this so many times, a real estate agent gets paid for delivering the sale or purchase of a property. You will not pay a real estate agent for not having found you the right home or not having sold your home. Therefore, our real estate agents have to be trained to actually deliver that result. It's not a matter of I can show you properties with a smile on my face and I can tell you this is the bedroom and this is the bathroom or get you to the right property. It is also my role as a real estate agent to actually facilitate your purchase or your sale of a property and make that easy. And therefore, the softer skills come in that side of the induction training, where over 15 sessions we cover the real estate tools and also the soft skills, enough for them to get started, because we have to keep in mind that these people need to go out there, test their skills and also start to build their business. After which, that is then your domain, Paul, with the more advanced training.
Generally, they come back to me after that, and when they come to me, we do overlap a little bit. So customer care, sales techniques. What we do is we tend to remind them and often of what they've already learned, and then we go a bit deeper. Now, the issue about more advanced training, anybody can deliver onboarding training. Any old setup, anybody who prints a business card, calls themselves a real estate agency, can train in MERPA policies or planning authority, but they can't actually create the type of dynamic we have. When you've got a group of 15, 20 people in a room sharing ideas, sharing disappointments and successes, and then sharing ideas on how to be better together, that learning process is that adults tend to learn often by unlearning bad habits, unlike children. So knowing that when we develop people, sometimes the process of teaching them more advanced skills means having to get them to understand that the old habits need to be wiped away. And what's happening now, which is great, is they're coming from the induction training already with good habits. Because before, what we used to have is they used to get to me a little bit too late, where they've picked up bad habits. But now they're coming to me with much better habits we can build on. So, for example, if I told them, okay, one of the routes to success is routine, they understand, because in the office they're being told, did you do your numbers? Did you phone these 5 people this week? Did you follow up? Did you check the database? Did you update? The routines are already there. They're getting into the idea of it. So the training they get with us then, when it's at a more advanced stage and we have more planned, Jeff and I were talking about further training for this coming summer, only a few days ago, they get to learn how to, for example, be mentally tough. See, one of the biggest problems in real estate is, and I tell people in training, what you're doing in real estate is literally failing as much as you can so that you can succeed, without letting that in any way affecting your attitude. So you fail, and you fail again, and then you succeed, but then you fail. And if you can get used to the fact that failure is your friend, then you're going to be a great real estate agent. The problem is they learn the basics, and then they start to sell, and they forget why they started to sell. So they have to come back then to training to understand that all they have to do is the basic stuff. Think about your customer first. You're there for your customer, and that's it. And if you think and place your customer at the foundation of everything you do, you'll do your job properly. And they might use you again and even refer people to you. When they get back into that, they realize that they can be successful. It's a lot easier to accept the failure because it's part of success. So the advanced training is advanced, yes, but it's also some repetition. We do look backwards to move forwards.
It's definitely. In fact, one of our intentions is to have estate agents come back for a whole year to training once a month for some sort of topic or another, to keep it going and refreshed. Because, as you said, we are not teaching children who are sponges, so to speak, in my terminology, but we're teaching people who already have habits and have to survive in a market and an industry which is quite tough. Let's face it. I mentioned the Stetson and the hat, and it's a matter of how the public also perceives us and how they treat us. You need to have a thick skin, and that defines also how a real estate agent works. So once in training, he's in an area where he's being taught the theory and shown some practice, but when he's out in the real bad world, he's being pushed around by customers, and that will come out. The training has to be ongoing to keep that agent understanding that he is a professional, he still has to have a professional approach, and the worst thing he can do is to stop servicing a client who's not respecting him and not behave differently.
Going on to another subject, regulation. There was a white paper 3 years ago. We haven't heard much about it in recent weeks, months. If you were there and the authorities ask you for advice, how would you implement it in terms of training the agents? How would you implement the licensing?
Well, I met the minister a couple of times also with regards to this. When the whole white paper thing had been presented, we had a couple of meetings with him after, as trainers. They wanted to know what you thought and what was your advice. And my advice was simply get cracking on it. Let's get this, because you'll never get another opportunity. Now, there were, to be fair, situations out of the minister's control, because he moved on to a new ministry, a new portfolio, and somebody else came in. The problem is that it was left there, and it's probably gathering dust somewhere. I'd like to think it's not. I'd like to be hopeful, but the problem with that was that was driven primarily by a company like Remax, where we wanted to improve the standard and the quality. And the only way you'll do it is by implementing some kind of regulation. So we're all for it, as you know. Now, there are agents who have been around for donkey's years. They know the business inside out, and there are new agents. So what was proposed in that original white paper was there would be a grandfather clause, where agents who have enough training and evidence that they are experienced enough, maybe certified in that sense, wouldn't need to do a certification course to be able to get their license. But new people would. Now, to be fair, as we wait and hope that that will catch fire again, we've continued. We've continued with the right attitude of continuously training and investing. So basically, we're ready for it. We just need the law to appear so that we can fall in line. And why this is great for the market in Malta is because, let me give you an example, something you hear a lot, okay? As a trainer, people know I train Remax. And being public, people write to me and say, you guys, the people you're training, are pushing the prices of property up. And what people don't realize is our people, our guys, are trained to try and keep the property down, because it doesn't pay us that they're overpriced, because we can't sell. So we're fighting the seller market at the moment, which is driven by unknown forces, where prices are becoming unreasonable, and our agents are fighting to get them down. Now, how do we give them these skills? We give them these skills by continuously investing in training. But at some point, this is all going to change. We don't know when. It'll become a buyer's market. The attitude now has to change completely. Then we'll be accused of doing something else, dropping the prices, being unreasonable. So you can never really win. You had said, we're being attacked in the real world out there, and it's very true. However, there is the other extreme. In countries like Sweden and Ireland, they have to get a degree 3-4 years before they can even touch real estate. But then what you're ending up with is people with a degree who are top heavy on theory but have no soft skills. They don't understand interpersonal skills and compassion and empathy. These are skills which only streetwise people do well with. You can learn them, but it takes a long time. So there are two extremes. So what do we want in Malta? I think we want a sensible regulation which keeps us on a professional level and cuts out many of those cowboys who damage the industry and give us a bad name like that.
Yeah, agreed. I think that the licensing should not be too difficult. It should raise the bar, yes, but no, a 3-4 year course would just make it impossible, and nobody would be a real estate agent, and it is not necessary. There isn't 3 or 4 years worth of learning to do. There are some basic tools and some skills which you must have. I think it would be far more important to not give a license for life, but to have a real estate agent have to come back for a test or an exam or a course again every couple of years or every year if need be. It's far more important to see that this goes on further. If we take driving skills, if we got your license 30 years ago, it doesn't mean you know how to drive correctly on the road today. And the same would apply to real estate agents. So I think the examination for the licensing would be far more important. I would leave the training and the education to private companies to handle, as opposed to having to do it on a government style.
Possibly with guidelines of what subjects need to be covered by competent people. Because, you see, I remember when this white paper came out, there were a couple of people who decided to become trainers and set up courses to go along with this license that was envisaged. But when you see the people who were setting themselves up as trainers and academies, they knew nothing about the industry, or they were failed people in the industry themselves. So even there, we need to have very clear standards as to who can and who can't deliver training. Now, that's going to be difficult, okay? But there are many competent people out there who know what they're doing, who can set apart a program and follow a program. I think it's a matter of competence with being reasonable, with being, not too rigid, as you said, because some of the best people out there in this business are actually people who've never read a book. They're very streetwise. They love to be with people. Their weakness would be the admin aspect of their work because they're very good on the development side. So you can develop that. So we wouldn't want to shut out people completely. A 3-4 year course, a diploma, completely cuts out these people.
Yes.
Many of them, it wasn't their forte, but they can still do very well and learn to produce an excellent product, an excellent service.
So you're saying the courses will be something like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 9 modules, 10 modules?
Yeah,
something short?
in that area. We're not talking about years and months because, as James said, one key needs to keep in mind, real estate agents don't get paid until they sell. So if you just lock them down in training all the time, these people are running out of money. So you've got to be reasonable. So it's got to be competent. It's got to be complete enough to give them some really good basis to offer excellent service from the outset, and then they're certified as long as James said, completely agree that every now and then they get refresher courses to maintain that position. Otherwise, they lose their license. Yeah?
Let's face it, the government should not have an interest on their selling ability. That is something we would be looking after. The government would be interested in having a license to people who would be able to advise and say a convenue is, an undated convenue is automatically 3 months long. And little stuff like that, which they must know, not never heard of. MEPA, no, you can't apply to build another floor here, and so on and so forth. And advising clients wrongly. However, one has to admit as well that this white paper for real estate agent is a small fraction of what we need to do. There's so much more, which is going, one can't go into this discussion because it's going out of scope here, but there's so much more, and a lot is happening to the industry and to the estate agents because of the way we do deal in property in Malta. And if we look overseas and we see North Americans and many of mainland Europe as well, the way they trade in property, it makes the real estate agent more accountable for the work he does.
Yeah.
And our system in Malta, where a property is listed with most real estate agents at the same time,
Open listings.
opens up the customer to being alone. He's not being advised correctly because nobody has taken full responsibility for his property as a seller or a buyer for finding his property.
Yeah.
The way it's done overseas, the real estate agent who is contracted, legally bound to do the job, has to have the knowledge and has to be tested accordingly, but it makes him accountable for the work he's doing and his service.
Yeah.
And you can then lose a license if you do not.
Listing agent.
We are talking about the way it is, the industry is done overseas, makes the agent more accountable. Today we are not accountable. If I offer bad advice, you can't sue me.
Yeah.
I have nothing to lose. If you ask me to list your house and I don't sell it, it's no big deal. You'll list it with everybody else.
Exactly.
So why are you looking at me?
Well, that brings up the subject of, you said, open listings, and that's the culture which we know is wrong. It's a very bad culture. I mean, the seller out there thinks that if they list their property with 9-10 different real estate agents, that 9-10 real estate agencies are going to get all their people promoting their property, which means they're going to get lots of potential buyers, lots of offers, and the best price. In fact, the opposite happens, and they just don't understand it. The only way you're going to get an agent really working on your property is if somehow they're investing in it, which is our exclusive program. In our exclusive program, it costs us money to promote it, and we need to sell it. Because the longer it stays on our books, the more it costs us. So we're invested in selling it at the best price as soon as possible. An open listing culture is a very bad idea, and unfortunately it's also endemic culturally in Malta. Take a country like Poland. The people who run the region of Poland, Remax Poland, they were Canadians, Polish Canadians. They lived there for a while. When they came back to Poland and they set up Remax as a franchise, they went immediately onto a total exclusive program. They're the only ones in Poland to do it. And they sell more than anybody else, but they have less agents. So it's a matter of even changing strategy. And I think in Malta, what we have is a situation where we're ready for it. We're already making headway. We have many exclusive listings. We just need to convince ourselves that it can be done, because we still have this, it won't work in Malta attitude. I've seen this work in Istanbul. I've trained Istanbul. And there's a place called Bolu, which is on the border with Syria. I remember training in Bolu, and I remember them saying that will never work in Bolu. A year later, Bolu are like number one. All their listings are exclusive. They're selling like cheesecakes because they tried it. It's mental block. If it won't work, we've got to deal with it.
We are selling bricks and mortar to human beings, whether you're doing it in Canada or doing it in Malta. There's not one culture in Canada, or in America there are thousands. Yeah. Malta alone has multiple cultures, so that's not quite the reason. Coming back a bit on topic, the reason why this will work better, why this will help, is because the agent must become accountable with an exclusive listing contract with an owner who's entirely dependent on this agent to market it with other estate agents, to ensure that this property is sold in a time frame which is agreed on contract. That makes the agent accountable, and now that license comes into play. Because give me a license and then I'm not accountable for my actions, the license is quite worthless.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of education, yes, for a license and training and testing, but the bottom line, accountability and cold hard cash, as you said, we invest in exclusive listing properties, we invest heavy marketing costs, makes us accountable.
Yeah.
And therefore the agents, even in Remax, if an agent who is not well trained or is avoiding being well trained is trying to list exclusively, the office is pulling back and saying no, because simply the agent is not professional enough yet to be able to handle that level of service.
Because it's a big responsibility.
It's a huge responsibility, even for us, because we put in the money. So that gives us a level of accountability where we are forced to ensure that our agents are trained and up to the level of service that the standard of service that we require to reach an exclusive listing where we are contracting, yes, we can sell your house, or yes, on the buyer's side contract, we can find you a home.
Yeah, very true, very true. I mean, when you work with foreign, when you work with foreign people, or if they come from Italy, if they come from the United Kingdom, if they come from Norway, these people work with exclusive listings. Their culture is exclusive. They don't understand open listing culture. What do you mean I give it to you, you and you? If I give it to you, you look after my property, you have my interests at heart, and we train for that. But training isn't enough. There's also that cultural aspect. We need to get people to believe, even our local vendors, they need to believe in the exclusive product. The idea that they think that they're going to get more eyes on their property just by listing it with everyone is pretty much a fallacy. We know it doesn't work.
What are the consequences should the authorities not implement the regulation?
Well, for us, the consequences are mild because we are already stepping far ahead of our competition in terms of training and raising the bar of our Remax real estate agent. So I don't foresee too many consequences on our part. However, as a market, from the buyer and seller's perspective, from the customer's perspective, I believe that the consequences would be that they would still have to deal with unprofessional real estate agents who are not in a position to offer such a service. Do you agree, Paul?
Oh, I agree with 100%. I think the issue, the people who suffer the most will ultimately be the customer, because the customer deserves better. It's as simple as that. I think why you've got a company like Remax pushing for this, because in the past, and I know from working with all the big boys in Malta in the past, nobody bothered with pushing this regulation because they didn't want to be regulated, because it allowed them to be cowboys. When Remax turned up on the scene, it was a different ballgame. I mean, the standards we have to live up to, regions compete against each other for the best amount of transactions and sales, but the service standards, this quality, it's always been drummed into us that we need to improve. So for us, I agree, it won't make any difference, but if we don't nationally do something about it, then I think the customer ultimately would suffer. Now, if we're so open to be international, to be, attracting, and we have thousands of people coming every year, foreigners coming to Malta, the level has to improve. They expect something else. So, as I agree with 100%, we'll probably be okay. We'll probably do better than our competition as we invest so much. But ultimately, the cowboys will be allowed to thrive, and that will have a detrimental effect on the actual industry as a whole. So we won't be able to change it as fast or modify it to what we need it to be. What we envisage a professional real estate agent looks like, sounds like, acts like, the ethics, the knowledge, that the government has to help.
For sure. And in fact, one of the problems with the rise would be that, as is today, there's nothing to lose. When I have a license which I'm able to lose by, depending on what I say and how I deliver my service, my code of ethics, so to speak, if I can lose my license, then I'm going to be more careful. Without that license there, no real estate agent on the island has anything to lose by lying, cheating, or not being totally honest and transparent with his customer. So
no consequence.
At the end of the day, it's always the customer who's losing out.
What can we do besides regulation to improve the reputation of the real estate industry?
Well, I think that people can take more personal responsibility. And if you take on, in the name of, for example, a brand like Remax, the responsibility of taking on to most people that we deal with, most of the bread and butter properties we are selling for people or selling to, these are the greatest, most important investment people make in their lives. And if they're going to entrust their property, which is their main nest egg, in the hands of a person who's trying to sell it for them, at least price it right. Yeah, or at least market it correctly, or bring buyers who aren't going to waste their time. And these are the things we as individuals need to take personal responsibility. Now, as much as we train and we focus on this and we repeat and repeat and repeat, you'll always find that one or two persons out there who think they can get away with murder. And those are the things which we don't want. Now, how do we control that? I think better recruitment. So who do we recruit? Who do we let in? And how do we develop? And then how do we police? I think it's those three stages there. The gate when they come in, so we select correctly, then we train and develop adequately, and then we police. We police in the sense that we make sure that people who are representing the brand do the right thing because our customers deserve it.
Having been around for over 20 years, what have you changed in your onboarding and training?
We do go through processes of raising the bar in terms of who we bring in to the industry. It is never a perfect formula because we've been surprised by many from both sides of the spectrum, and sometimes you think somebody is going to make a great and professional real estate agent, and that is not the result. But from time to time, I work with my managers to increase the level of education and commitment that an estate agent will give before I will allow him to be onboarded. Once in, we have created the accelerator program together with the affiliates so that we are ensuring that we are covering all bases within a shorter period of time. A year or two ago, it was taking us 2 to 3 months of training to actually reach that level. Today we can deliver it within 15 sessions, and we know it is concise and it does cover everything. And from then on, it's a matter of keeping your eye on your people and being able to see the whole picture and being able to see where your agents require further training, further refreshers, where they're not looking at the customer first, and being able, it's also a management training program that we have in place so that we do know how to improve our agents as we go along further.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate Conversation.